welcome to Famous When I'm Dead, where artists tell the story of how they thrive while they're still alive. And today, I'm your guest, Sam King Davis, and today we have Sebastian Martin, who is a Golden Nosey winner, caricature artist, illustrator, more of a graphic designer, I guess. And I would say probably the most, I don't want to put you on the spot, but in my opinion, I'd say you're the most innovative caricature artist in the US. So, yeah, man, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going great, just hunkering down in quarantine, just this crazy time of the corona. But yeah, just hanging in there and continuing to, do my thing.
What's up with the corona there? Are you guys pretty much locked down? I know it differs from state to state.
Yeah, we are still locked down, and I think we made national headlines of, where New York was, in cases. We have a huge spike in cases. So it's been crazy.
Oh, that's right. You had one of those states that didn't act or early
Yeah.
enough?
I think it was one of several of the cases, it's just been not necessarily sure why, but there's just been just a big spike in them, and things have had to shut down again.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we got lucky in Prague. The state acted really early, probably the earliest in Europe. So now we're pretty much almost completely open with everything now. And they only require masks in the metro, but not even public transportation. You don't even have to wear a mask there. So
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Maybe there'll be a huge spike.
Yeah. I know that we opened, and then people said we weren't ready, and then I think that was one of the reasons. But and then all of a sudden we're shutting back down like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
Cool. So the way I would like to start usually is just to talk a little bit about what life was like for you before you knew you were an artist.
Yeah. I think I always knew I wanted to be an artist, and I think people saw that in me even as a child, but I didn't go down that route. I tried a lot of different things. I actually, before I became a caricature artist, I was an exercise writer for racehorses, so something completely different. And you met me in person, so you know why I was the right height.
Yeah,
weight.
What is your height exactly?
I'm actually 5'1".
Okay.
I cling on to that 1 inch. So
I try to add the extra inch. I'm 5'10". I'm 5'10 and a half. So I just wish I had that extra inch and a half.
Yeah. I was the perfect height, weight, and everything. And my friends were like, "You should get into being a jockey." And I was like, "I don't know," but it was a tough sport, and so I tried it, and like I said, I tried many other things, but I just realized they just weren't my thing. And I think everybody kind of goes through that phase, trying to really find your place. And I just found myself coming back to art.
Did you have any other jobs that were related to your height?
Not necessarily, but because I was always the runt. Like I worked for a dealership, and they used me for to crawl into small spaces, like the vehicles.
Gosh. Yeah.
Like they would always use me for that, so I was useful in that way.
Cool. So you always came back to art, but like, was there a moment or was there an experience that you had that kind of called that out for you or made that obvious?
Yeah. So when I was actually working at the dealership, and I remember I drew a parody of one of my coworkers, and I put it up in the office, and everybody started walking by and seeing it, and they thought it was funny, and it was hilarious, and I think there was something in me right there and then that just kind of sparked. And I didn't know the word, I didn't know it was called caricature at the time.
Hmm.
I just knew this is funny and this is cool. And so I went out, I started going online, drawing how to draw cartoons, and eventually I came across caricatures. And then I went online, watching video tutorials. I started buying books on caricatures, and then eventually that's when I came across ISCA, the International Society of Caricature Artists, and it blew my mind
Yeah.
of the potential. And I didn't even know there was a community of caricature artists. And
Yeah.
when I saw all the artwork, and it was otherworldly. I didn't know you could push caricatures to that limit. And I got so excited that every day after work, I would practice hours and hours of drawing. I would work 8-hour shifts, come home,
Was
draw
that
for.
after your first convention or before?
No, that was before.
Ah,
So yeah, this was about maybe 6 years before.
whoa.
Maybe, yeah,
Six
something like
years
that.
before your first convention. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, something like that. And I mean, I just started drawing like no other. I was just mad about caricature art. And then eventually, a couple years later, I got my first job as a cartoonist. And then that's when the ball started rolling, and I went on to be a freelance artist.
So you got your job as a cartoonist working for what? As a
Uh,
caricaturist or?
Pretty kind of, yeah. I was for the college newspaper. I
Oh,
was attending. Yeah, I got that. It was a lot. It was a lot of fun working with the journalists. But I had to say that was my first gig as an
huh,
artist.
huh. What was the first caricature book that you got?
Ooh, it was, boy, it was a small book, and I'm trying to remember the name. I have it on the bookshelf, but it was by someone by Isca. But I remember the second book definitely. It was a sketchbook, and it was Joe Bloom's.
It
Um,
was Sketchus Infectus.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, that one
That's a
for
good.
sure. I carried that one everywhere with me.
Huh. So that was your first gig, but then like, how did you transition? Were you working at the auto dealership when you transitioned into full time as an artist, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I was working as a dealer, at the dealer. I was washing cars, and then it slowly transitioned. I started doing it part time, and then it went into full time, uh, my full time career as an artist.
And
A lot of work,
that was through caricatures, or
pretty much. Yeah, do cartoons, caricatures. I did a little bit of things for graphic design. I worked for a company doing graphic design,
is that
but
what
I
you
was
went to
still.
school for?
Yeah, actually,
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
yeah got my degree in graphic design and digital illustration.
Hmm.
Um, so that helped out a lot too, for
Yeah.
sure.
Where did you go?
I went to a small community college in Arizona, and I only went for my associates, and then after that, I started working as full time, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna pursue any more schooling, and that's one of the reasons I don't necessarily blast on, my degree and things like that I went to school for art, because it was beneficial to me. But I don't think to be a great artist you have to go to art school, because I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of artists that say, I'm never going to be a great artist, or I'm never going to work in this studio or whatever if I don't have this degree. I don't have that type of knowledge. But you can still gain all that and still be a great artist. I know a lot of great artists that don't have a degree, didn't
Hmm.
go to college. So that's why I don't necessarily say that I went to school for art, but I
Yeah.
did.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I got a bachelor degree, and I think what I learned are like the main things that I got out of school were I got a scholarship to come and study in Vienna for four
Mm,
months, and that got me comfortable with the idea of like living in Europe. So that was like a big life changer for me. and then just some of the connections that I made. But there's very little things that I actually picked up, I think, in college. I mean, I know for sure, like technique wise, learning color and line work and just like the technical aspect of art, I learned that like after I became a caricature artist. They didn't teach me that stuff necessarily in college, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it did expose me to other types of art and kind of try to experiment with those different types of genre of art.
mhm.
Uh, but everything else I learned in the field, things you don't really learn there. So, but yeah, there are some benefits to it for sure.
So what about the first convention? Like, can you? One of the funny memories I remember is because I guess yeah, that was my first convention too. So you and I showed up at Isca the first year together,
Right on.
and I remember everyone was freaking out because there was a scorpion in the tent, and it was like a bunch of apes, you know, like surrounding this scorpion, and they put it in a glass and stuff, and you're just like at your table drawing because they probably crawl through your living room in
Oh,
Arizona all
I,
the time.
I flicked them off all the time. It's just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
I have
remember that.
I have a memory for you. I have this hanging up in my studio. I took it down. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we sat at the same table, right?
I don't remember. I think we were at different tables, but there was a point like somewhere in the evening, I think that we were working together or working next to each other.
Okay,
Were
okay.
we? I don't know. Your memory is probably better than mine.
Yeah, I thought we were, but maybe I don't know. Maybe we were the next table, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's still one of my favorites, man. And I guess that's kind of how you draw live caricatures now, yeah? In that same line
Yeah,
work and structure.
yeah, it's interesting. I kind of switch styles. I don't mean to, but it's just what kind of flows out when I'm doing live. Um, I don't know if I think maybe it's just because it's quicker than my other type of art, the geometric, abstract. Um, I'm trying to make a quick buck, you know.
But I can still see it in this drawing particularly because you
Mhm.
have a lot of angular lines and there is still really good structure in this. Were you using chart pack or what did you use for this?
Let's see. I think I was using Prismacolor markers, and white Conte. And I'm trying to remember what else. I think that was mostly what I was using.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you remember it was a Prismacolor marker you said? Like a black Prismacolor?
Yeah, yeah. And
Cool.
then I think I was using some gray tones with a gray tone marker, Prismacolor markers, and just a mixture, kind of mixed media.
So what about what kind of obstacles or like roadblocks did you find getting into the field of like transitioning from your normal job into like full-time caricaturist, full-time I guess you do graphic design as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you just the obstacles
Yeah,
of
yeah,
transitioning.
just like some of the obstacles and roadblocks that may have presented themselves to you.
Hmm. Yeah. I think through that whole journey, I think the most of the roadblocks and things like that were really just trying to find clients, trying to build that clientele. And then also, I think I always say this, you are your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
So sometimes I get in the way of pursuing that. I know I had a dream that I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to do it full time. But I also had to realize that I had to keep pushing myself towards that dream, towards that goal. So those are some of the things, but I think the majority of it was the clientele. Just trying to find people, trying to build it, and you get rejections after rejection, and it gets discouraging. It really does. That's the thing. When you know that that is the thing you want to pursue, all of those obstacles start to kind of dim, and you just keep pushing forward. You keep going. You keep going. There's just been a lot of sweat, tears and all that, but it's worth it in the end for sure.
So I'm interested to hear about your experience with like getting in your own way. I have my own experience with that, but I'm interested to hear kind of your account of that. Like what type of things? Is it just like the voice in your head or?
Um, so kind of going in my own way as far as um my career, or you mean like style, or what exactly?
Well, you were saying that as artists, like a lot of times we get in our own way. Like that's kind of a common
Oh,
problem. So
mhm.
what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, every day after work I would sketch for hours. Um, and sometimes you don't feel like it, and you just want to turn the TV on, or you want to just do whatever else, which is fine, taking a break. But if you do that and you make a habit of it and you put your sketchbook to the side, eventually that's just a habit that's gonna continue to grow. I always say that creativity has to be scheduled in because it'll be the first thing that'll be scheduled out.
Mm,
And so you have to schedule it in because there's some days that you're going to want to draw, and there's some days that you're not. It's going to feel like a plate of vegetables. Sometimes you just don't want to do it,
yeah,
but you
yeah.
you have to.
When you were coming home and sketching, what kind of like were you listening to podcasts or were you just listening to music or did you have anything or were you totally quiet?
Yeah, so music was definitely a big thing. I have to get in the flow. I think that's pretty common for a lot of artists. Just get in that flow, and then I watched any kind of YouTube tutorial or something where someone was talking about art or caricatures, things like that. It was at the time, I remember it was I was almost searching really hard for caricature tutorials, people who were just talking about caricatures.
Mm-hmm.
But I just try to just take whatever I could on the subject of art. So
Mm-hmm.
that was usually my creative process.
Hmm. So let's talk a little bit, I guess, about your style, like how you developed that. I mean, obviously, you have the background in graphic design, but were there particular people that influenced you, like that were in the Isca community, or what kind of like led to what you did that
Yeah.
got so much attention at Isca?
Yeah. So I have heard it said like this, style is overrated. And I agree. It's when I stopped trying to look for my style, that's really when it started to emerge. And, um, I can say that my style really comes from an influence of the things that I used to enjoy as a child. And it's very nostalgic to me, and that's how I enjoy continuing to create art, is when I put it in that type of a mindset that it's just drawing from my childhood, all those memories. So I was influenced by one artist, Lane Smith. He was an illustrator.
Hmm.
He did the books, The Stinky Cheese Man, and the True Story of the Three Little Pigs. I mean, if you see his art,
Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember that.
yeah, he had a huge influence on me, and I just loved those books as a child. And so I think those are some of the influences I had into my own artwork, of the color schemes, the textures. He used a lot of textures. I grew up with Martin Hanford, who did the Where's Waldo books, or Where's Wally, and just the amount of detail. And then Sean Tan, Sean Tan, one of my who does beautiful illustrations. Those were some of my influences, and if you see their artwork, you can kind of see the influence of mine. But I stopped trying to look for my style, and I just started to enjoy drawing. Whatever comes naturally to you, you'll see that is your style starting to emerge. You might not see it in that first year, you might not see it in the next, but eventually you'll start to see it starting to come about in your artwork. But that's what I always tell people too, from my own experience. Don't force it. You can't force your style. I see a lot of artists that try to copy, or they walk in the shadow of their favorite artist, and they try so hard to look like them. But then what ends up happening is you lose joy in your drawing because you're trying to be like somebody that you're not, when
Hmm.
you should be trying to be like you.
Was
So
there a moment that you had that you realized that you were like, was there a shift that happened, or did you just kind of look back over the last few months and say, oh, I guess I can see a style developing now?
yeah, I'd say it was when I started to look back, and I looked at my sketchbooks, and I'd see things that I was starting to draw that I enjoyed to draw. And I was like, oh, this, it looks like I'm starting to really draw geometrically. And I keep going back to that, even though I'm trying to draw like someone else, but I keep going back to this thing. And I was
Hmm.
like, you know what? I think I just need to embrace that. Let me just try that, and let's just go with it. And all of a sudden, this is where my style started to emerge, and people started to see it. And I know you've commented, and I know other people in saying, it's interesting to see your style starting to take form or evolve.
Hmm.
Uh, but that's when you start to just discover your style, not intentionally. You just have fun. You just have fun with what you're drawing.
Yeah. Actually, this is a good point to bring a question in from one of the guests. So let me pull that up.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the question I think is pretty much what I brought up, but there might be something different in here. Who or what inspired your artwork the most? Was it another artist, a cartoon, street art, etc.? I would really be interested to know. So I think we kind of covered that one already.
Mhm.
And I'll play, we'll look at, that's from JJ Ward or Jacob Ward. We'll look at his artwork in like near the end of the episode, but I'm gonna play for you Lars Eric Robinson. You remember Lars?
Yeah, yeah. I think I
All
know
right.
that name at least.
So he had a good question I think fits nicely in this part of the conversation. So I'm gonna play it for you. Let me know if you hear it. I think this is the microphone that. Can you hear? Is that louder?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so this is the mic. So let me play it.
Hey, Sebastian Martin, and hey, Sam King Davis. Good morning. It's Lars. It is 7 o'clock this morning, but I did get a notification from Sam giving me a heads up to ask you some questions. So, yeah, I'm going to ask you a question. Basically, I've always admired you, the way you see your shapes and the way you see your designs. I do have a question for you. I don't remember, but do you do thumbnail ideas before you make your characters up, make your caricatures? Because it's really interesting the way you see your different shapes. So do you just go right at it and see what happens? Do you just let the creativity take it over? Because the reason I'm asking is because I have a really hard time seeing shapes like that. As you know, you probably know my work, but that'll be something interesting to learn. Do you teach people how to do your kind of like to see design work like that? Or what is a great advice that you can give someone that wants to try to push himself to see shapes like that in somebody's face or reference? I appreciate it, man. Keep it up. Bye.
Yeah, so we got a couple questions there. I think
Yeah.
obviously he's referring to your studio work when he asked you about like if you go straight into it.
Yeah, yeah. So he said something about thumbnails. Yes, I do a lot of thumbnails. So I have two sketchbooks. I have a larger sketchbook that I keep, about regular 11 by 8, and then I have really small sketchbooks. Those small ones are very crucial because those are where I just jot down really quick shapes, or whatever comes to mind. I'm not thinking too much about detail. I'm thinking about overall composition, the overall shapes, those interesting things. And then I start to pull that over to the larger sketchbook to really work out the details. because you don't want to get caught up in details yet. And I think that's where the shapes come into play is the smaller thumbnails. But before I get to that though, there's something that I refer to as our creative bank account. If you want to pull from your creative bank account, you have to be making deposits. So a lot of those shapes and things that I draw in my studio that most people see, those just come from my surroundings, things that I see in nature, or maybe I see someone else's, ceramic sculptures that have very weird, twisted, shapes. I'll note that, I'll jot it down, or maybe I'll take a picture of it, I'll save it, and then I'll later on use it. And so, you know, that is really what is my inspiration too. It's just from other people's artwork and just seeing my surroundings, that where I get my most interesting shapes. So
That's an interesting answer because that reminds me of, I think it was maybe Nathan Fawkes said this, who's an kind of a well-known art instructor, but he was saying that you should solve keep your work zoomed out to solve the big problems and then zoom in to solve the small problems, which is kind of what you're doing with the sketchbook. But that is an interesting technique to take it from the tiny sketchbook and then you both of those are by hand, right?
Yes, yeah.
And then my question is what happens after that? Do you go straight into what vector program are you using or Photoshop or?
So I use, most people say, or they look and they think I use Illustrator, but I'm actually using Photoshop. It's not that I think it's better than Illustrator. It's just it's just a comfortable level when I'm using all the textures and things like that. That's just what I go to. So if I think you can do the same in Illustrator, but it's just my preferred tool and what I'm most comfortable with. Yeah.
So that'll be a pixel based. It's interesting because it looks vector based, but it's actually all pixel based, right?
Yeah, so Photoshop still has the pen tool, which creates the hard edge shapes. It's not vector, but yeah, it is a raster pixel. But you can still get that look that you can in Illustrator for sure.
So yeah, I guess his next question was about, do you teach that, or maybe just any advice that you can give on how to see geometry better in the face? Maybe I don't know. I don't know if he was talking specifically about the face, but he is a caricature artist, so.
Yeah, yeah. When relating to caricatures, when I when I do that geometric for a face, you're taught when you take like a life drawing class that there are no straight edges on a person. So you got all the different kind of curves, the texture, lines. But I ignore that and I just say, all right, the nose, if it's going in a certain direction, I'm going to really emphasize that straightness of that, the nose. I'm just, making everything as straight as possible, things like that. And then also, I think of when I look at a face too, I'm also thinking I'm not really seeing a person, obviously they're a person, but I'm thinking like, oh, what if this was like a building, like you think of the doorway, the windows and things like that. But those are all straight edge too. So my mind is sort of abstract like that. I'm thinking more architectural, I guess. But I mean, honestly, I don't really know exactly how my mind works in that way. I just know that it's fun to do it, to just draw in that way. And so I just try to figure out how I can make it the most interesting in that shape. But like I mentioned before, all of those things come because I studied. I put that in my creative bank account, or I see certain shapes in real life, and then I try to apply it to like someone's face, or an animal, like when I'm trying to caricature an animal. So it's all the same thing.
Would you say, I actually have a couple of comments about what you just said, but about the creative bank account, I wanted to ask, would you say that is like in your visual vocabulary, for example, like do you have it in your vocabulary after you sketch it, or does it stay in there if you take a picture of it? Or I guess the question is, does it stay better if you sketch it first? That's a hard
Um,
hard one to say, yeah.
yeah, it is. Uh, that's um, that's the tricky part, getting it from the creative bank account or in your head to the sketch is very tricky, and I think it's tricky for anybody, even for any professional artist. It's very tricky business because what is mostly up here doesn't always translate what's down here. I'd have never gotten an art piece where it's exactly what I imagined in my head. It's always better in your mind,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean you can't get something interesting on paper. But you're pulling from the subconscious. You're trying to pull from the subconscious. So for me, the way I practice, if there's something that comes to mind that I think is interesting, I jot it down right away, even if it's a very loose sketch, because you're gonna forget it in like 5 or 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And so that's probably the closest you're ever gonna get from the creative bank account to the sketch, uh, as accurate as possible. But
Hmm.
it doesn't mean you can't get a good thing from your sketch.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're using basically everything in the world as reference. And that reminds me, when you talked about thinking architecturally, that reminds me of Maria Picasso Picure, because she
Mhm.
talked about that, and she actually studied architecture, and you can see that in her work. But I think that the leap that you made, or let's say like the difference in style, or I don't know how you want to put it, but you kind of had something like that going on architecturally, like the first year, or maybe it was the second year. No, it was your
It's,
first year.
it's my
Yeah,
first.
then yeah, then your second year you were doing like more digital stuff. And then
Yeah.
you started adding like gradients, more transitions, more like textures. So I guess what happened there? Like, did you just see the textures that you liked from like Sean Tan or Lane Smith, or was it just an idea you had and you threw in there? Or?
Yeah, I think it was an influence from them for sure, growing up with that artwork. And then also, we all have our own tastes, our flavors. And so mine was just, I just see textures and I think, ooh, that looks really nice. I'll borrow that. Maybe I can use it in my own work. And I'm not even thinking I don't think too hard about it. I just think, I like that. Let me grab it. Let me use it.
Mhm.
Um, that's just how my mind works. I don't try to overthink it. I'm just trying to enjoy it, like I said, and then see how I can use it in my own artwork. So,
Yeah, it's like about the feeling as opposed to like the thinking of it.
mm, yeah.
Your work, definitely like that straight line thing is definitely something that I think about. And man, I push so hard. I struggle so hard to make straight lines, but I can't seem to do it. Like, I don't know what it is about my work, but I probably think about that drawing that you did of me like at least once a day, like when I'm out working, at least one or two of the drawings that I make, I'm like, all right, make a straight line, and I just like my hand just won't do it. I think I'm just too used to making like making more curvilinear lines, and but
Mm,
it's definitely like thinking about that, I think has definitely changed my personal like my composition, and also you can see in some of my work like the straight lines and stuff. So I just love that look. Like this one is a good example of, it's like, I don't know, the line on the ear, like right on
mhm.
the edge of the ear. It's like straight, but it's still got a little bit of a curve to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That look is awesome. And I've also stolen this from you too. The whole thing with the like the
Yeah.
the strings moving around.
Yeah, the floating. Yeah. Pretty cool.
So, um, so what's it like now? Like, what's life like now? Like, you started Colorbox Entertainment like a few years ago, like 3 years ago.
About 3 years ago now. Yeah, it'll be coming on 3 years. Mhm.
So that kind of like ties back to something that you said earlier about building clientele as like one of the kind of roadblocks or obstacles or challenges. So maybe we can talk about business for a little bit. Like
Yeah.
what's been your experience like getting started with Colorbox?
Yeah, so Colorbox was kind of thought up in the midnight of things, and so I just like jot that down. But it was my start of creating caricatures. But this is something that every artist I know asks, how can I make a living as an artist? And that was my question too at the time. And there was something I came across by an artist named Jay Parker, who's the creator of Inktober. But he says this, you don't need a project, you need a product. And that was the thing that I realized, I can keep cranking out as many, drawings as I can, but I need to make that into a product, So instead of just drawing it on a canvas, I start promoting and saying, hey, my work would look great on your phone case, or on your laptop, and things like that. And so that was my mindset at the beginning when I started Colorbox Entertainment, because I don't just do caricatures on paper. I'm trying to do it outside of that as well. How can it be printed into stickers, things like that. So, that's the business side of things. But yeah.
I had no idea that that's what you were doing. So
Mhm.
when I hear Colorbox Entertainment, I think like live events and parties and stuff, but I had no idea that you were doing it on other things. Is that the primary kind of angle of it, or that you do caricatures and artwork on other things?
Yeah, I mean, as like you said, the word entertainment implies, the live setting and things like that. But I didn't want to just limit it to that, because obviously, as someone who has to support his family, I have to find other ways of making money. So that's where the business thing comes in, finding a product, not being so much focused on just the projects. So you try to find other ways too, and it's fun for me, because at the beginning, and I think every artist is like this, we don't think like business people. We don't, it's just not in us, so you have to learn that. But you can definitely learn it. You learn how to talk to people, you learn what words to say, you learn how to market yourself,
Hmm.
and then so like you have to come up with an elevator speech, things like that, to try to sell who you are. So that way people buy your work. It doesn't have to be great work, but if you can sell it with your words, people will buy it for sure. It's interesting. So
So tell me how that works. Is that like people go on the website, or you do that live and you say you can buy a phone case with this design, or do you do like custom caricatures of people and then print that on their phone case, for example? Or
yeah, usually it's the in studio stuff. So like I'll just market that on social media.
oh,
Not so much live, yeah. So I'll just say, hey, your digital caricature can be on this tote bag or whatever, things like that. So I'll try to sell that for people. Usually those are the more private um, clients or customers. Um, but yeah, things like that.
so what about? I want to go back again to this. I want to kind of like step back to something we talked about earlier because I forgot to ask you. We were talking about your straight line approach and your kind of like angular approach. Um, how do you deal with female faces or like rounder faces? Are you just trying to stick to circles, or how do you deal with that? Because, we know that female faces are usually a little more round and less angular.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, in that sense, um, there's something that I think was helpful for me, and I learned from Nate Kapnicki. You look for the sound. You draw the visual sound, what their face is making. So it doesn't have to necessarily do with gender. When I actually don't find that obstacle with gender. With women, drawing women. Um, I I just go for the same way. I would approach it the same way, with a male, just drawing those geometric shapes and angular things, lines. So I don't think I necessarily have a great answer for that.
No, I
But,
think that's a great answer, really. Actually, Nate has this. I watched a video from him, and he talked about color draining. I don't know. Did you see that video?
I think I did, yeah. Saturating the color into like certain areas of the face.
Yeah, he's got one of us. Where do I have it? Oh yeah, there it is. But yeah, there's huge white areas, but you don't. Your mind kind of fills that in, So yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too. But I don't remember him saying look for the sound. But I like that because the one that he did of Kate, I'll actually bring it closer to the camera. Hold on.
Yep.
So my wife Kate is like known for her like laugh, her cackle. So she's got this like crazy laugh. So this is the one. I don't know if you can see.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, right on. And that's even in the book, the Manny's caricature book too. Yeah, that's a really great piece.
Yeah, so that's cool. Look for the noise. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I also like when I'm drawing people, I kind of get this. I do this thing sometimes where like I'll make the face that like if the person has a chin that's like pulled in, I'll feel my muscles like pulling themselves in when I'm drawing it. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's like we kind of like feel that person or sort of embody that person while we're doing the drawing. At least I do. And I find that the drawings like turn out much more interesting like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do that in my private studio when no one's looking.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to I'm trying to figure out, what would be the best for my composition. Like you almost feel it when you're drawing that person. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Absolutely.
And actually,
Sure.
Steven Silver, he recommended that to me. He recommended this acting book to me when I was talking to him about maybe getting into character design. He like gave me 2 books on acting. He like referenced those, and basically like what happened, like what a lot of actors do is that they, they try to embody whatever character that they're trying to play. So if it's like some evil character, they try to take on evil poses or like ominous poses and stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a really interesting energy exchange.
Yeah.
And I think it has more to do with that than the actual drawing, but somehow the drawing is like the result of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. So it's interesting you can do that and have that contribute to your composition, to your artwork, the acting part of thing.
Yeah, I think I shared this in the last one, in the last interview that I did, but there's this, I figured out for me anyway, what it is that makes it personally not fun and also more challenging to draw from a photograph than it does live. And it's because when a person is sitting in front of us, like we have at least 4 dimensions. We have obviously the 2-dimensional plane, but we also have their full structure. And then we also have the dimension of time, which is where the personality and the energy lives. So we're able to take all of that information in and feel it and put that on the paper. Where when it's a photo, it's just 2 dimensions to 2 dimensions.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing when I do a private commission from somebody, I don't just take the photos from them. I ask them like, tell me a little bit about yourself, personalities, things that you like, because those things help me because I can't see them in person. I don't have them right in front of me. So I want as much information as I can, not just the photos. It helps so much with your composition. Sure.
Yeah. What about the artwork that you're doing? Like you sent 10 studio pieces, which are going to be in the beginning of the video. But like that work, what do you do with that? Are prints available on your website, or how do you?
I don't really sell or market those necessarily, but they are on my Colorbox Entertainment website. And if you want a print, I can get you a print and mail it to you. Um, I don't. They're not very expensive, but yeah, I don't market it too much. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. Um, so let's talk a little bit about your experience with Isca because most, I don't know. It depends on how many people watch the video, but I would say a lot of them already know Isca. But for those of you who don't know, it's an International Society of Caricature Artists. Every year we have a big conference and we come together and we have competitions and lectures and um, yeah, it's like a big, awesome party. But there is also an award ceremony at the end, and there's the highest awards are the Golden Nosey, the Silver Nosey, and the Bronze Nosey. So you won your Bronze Nosey the second year that you came?
Uh, third, I believe.
Oh,
The
okay.
third year.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
I
think
won.
that's
Yeah, yeah. Fourth place was the second year.
okay. So you
Yeah,
got fourth, third, and then you got first place.
first place. Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
was that like?
Oh man. It was. I say it was awesome. It was great because the when I first heard about Isca, and that was when I was still working at the dealership, I made this post on Facebook, and I can even go and find it where I posted the Golden Nose and I said one day I'm gonna go and win this award. I'm gonna bring this trophy home, um, and to finally have that come true, and it was just an awesome feeling. Just being there with friends, especially celebrating with friends. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, people have probably asked you about this, and this question always comes up when people win something or accomplish something,
mhm.
and I'm not sure if it's the right question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. What comes after the Golden Nosy?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the top award, right? Another one, or what happens now?
Right. It's great to get the awards and trophies. Don't get me wrong. It's awesome, but really all it is a good feeling.
Hmm.
Um, but it doesn't stop there. You have to continue to push yourself as an artist. And this is where I when I became a part of ISCA, I wasn't just gonna I told myself I wasn't just gonna take from ISCA. I wanted to be someone who contributed to the community. I wanted to give back. And so that's still my motive is just to give back, to push myself in my artwork and then encourage others as well. Because there are other artists that are where I was years ago, where they were discouraged in that place, and I just want to be someone who's an encourager to them.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. I really don't. I think the next thing is for me is getting into books. Just illustrating picture books, things like that, because I really love picture books. And like I mentioned, the artists that I grew up with, like Lane Smith, Sean Tan, doing picture books. I think that is definitely the next tier for me, the next mountain to climb.
So what kind of ways are you giving back? Are you just talking to artists that are, I know you gave a lecture, um, you did a one-on-one at the last one, right? At the last convention?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, just things like that, seminars, but also just continuing to post artwork, I think is the most you can do as an artist, is to really keep putting your stuff out there, because other people are going to say, "Man, I love that. That's so good," and it encourages them. Because I know the artists I look up to, when I see them post work and I see their artwork and what they're doing, what they're talking about it gets me excited and going to want to go to my studio and continue to create artwork.
Mm.
So I think that's the best thing to do, is just for anybody, is just to put your art stuff out there, because you don't know who you're gonna speak to in that day.
Hmm. Yeah, and a lot of that's a great way to give back is just to keep inspiring people by staying inspired. Um, I guess a lot of things have changed. Like since I first met you, I think I met you like 4 or 5 years ago was the first ISCA, and now you have a child. Yeah, you got
Yeah,
married and had a child since then.
Yeah, and then one more on the way. So
Oh, yeah. Congratulations.
thank you, thank you.
So,
Yeah.
I guess my question is kind of centered around, you said that you would do your 8-hour shift and then you would come home and draw. Um, I have a wife and a dog. I don't have a child, but I do find that like I'm lucky in that my wife is cool with me like working in my studio all night, but I'm sure that won't happen when we have children. So, like, how do you keep that going, or what does your practice look like now?
Yeah, so that it was really challenging when I had my when we had our first child, and I was the stay-at-home dad, and then I was working from home as well at the same time, and it was challenging. I won't sugarcoat it, but you can make it work. When she slept, I was working, and that I had to really manage my schedule like that. But it is possible for sure, and you get creative because I would have my baby and like I would have it propped, my hand propped, feeding her and still drawing at the same time, you know. So you find creative ways to work around it. It it's tough, but I think anybody for sure can try it and I don't know, see how it works for them.
At least you're not drawing on the baby.
Oh
That
yeah,
would
that
be,
not definitely.
yeah, maybe for a tattoo artist that would be a good route. When you
Right.
were when you were like when you come home and you're studying or you're practicing, do you prefer drawing on paper or are you like pretty much into the tablet now or?
Paper. I love paper. You know, just doing it in in a actual sketchbook. I've tried sketching digitally, even though I'm all about digital, but there's just something about me getting in the flow, being able to think. I just do it better when I'm in an actual sketchbook. That's just my
Hmm.
preferred way. But yeah, I
Yeah, you wouldn't guess that. I wouldn't have guessed that you would answer that just based on your work, you know. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
so man, we're kind of running low on time. I wanted to ask you about the Mayan thing. Can we talk about that just for a second?
Yeah, yeah, we can do that.
That's such a cool heritage, you know. Like, I guess you grew up pretty, like, I don't know. You fill me in. You tell me what that's like.
No, yeah, I'm a first generation here in the States of Mayan. My parents are from Guatemala. We're Mayan blood, you know, we're from that tribe. So I only went to Guatemala once, and I got to meet my family the first time once. And they are definitely living deep in the mountains, like misty mountains, no
Wow,
electricity. They still have the mud huts. That's what my relatives live in.
that's
So
amazing.
we spent about a week and a half in Guatemala, and that's what we lived in when we were staying there. So it was interesting. I do have to say I was very blessed to come back to the States to realize the things that we have an actual
Yeah.
toilet. Because out there they have an outhouse and it's like a little stone with a hole carved in it. That's your toilet. And so
Oh,
you squat down in the jungle.
oh.
So,
Do they at least have
but
toilet paper?
they have toilet paper, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. That's not. At least you have
No,
that,
that's
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, growing up with my parents, they definitely were still immersed in that culture. So that's what we grew up to. The food was like that. It was very ethnic in that way, and um, but I mean, other than that, I lived a pretty normal American, you know, life. You know,
Yeah.
so
So what about is is there like a certain like spiritual practice that is still I mean, I assume they're still practicing the same spiritual practices, right?
I think in some areas, but most of it, like my family and I are Christian, and so a lot of the areas too down there are Christian,
Oh,
religious, in that way. So, but I don't have any relatives that do practice like that other spiritual, I don't know, Mayan stuff, but
huh.
I'm sure there are some.
D
So,
do you want to go back and like just like, do you ever feel like you just want to escape and go there for a bit, like for a month or?
Oh man, if I could go back, that is with the translator, I would. It was so inspiring to be there. It's so different. It's otherworldly, really.
Wow.
When I Yeah, because when I first went there, it's all green. The mountain, I mean, everything is covered in grass and vines, and it was it was inspiring to me as an artist, but also just being there. It was great. So I would definitely go back, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, there's something I don't know if it was from watching the Jungle Book or just like studying about the rainforest when I was young, but I always had this kind of like draw toward that type of environment, you know.
Mm.
And I've yet to visit the rainforest, but soon, soon, maybe in Thailand I'll go.
Mm.
So let's have a look at some art.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful illustration for sure.
I'm gonna
Right
get.
on.
Is there anything you have to say about it?
I mean, other than, just the tones and everything are great. I mean, the hair almost looks like photo, like a photograph. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't have a reference here with it, so it's kind of hard to say, other than what is here in front of me. The glare and the glasses, everything, all that is beautifully done for sure.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, the skin texture is really awesome too. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I I don't know. I feel like anything that I say is nitpicking and also kind of underqualified, but there are because first of all, it's like obviously very well rendered and
mhm,
structurally it looks pretty good, but like you said, we don't have a reference. Um,
yeah.
but there are areas that my eye keeps going back to, and this part right below the reflection on the glasses, that line on the upper eyelid, that doesn't seem right. Like there's something too flat about that line. My eye
Which
keeps it's like like right under the glare in the glasses, like the upper eyelid,
Oh, gotcha.
right where it meets the eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
maybe that's exactly what the photo looks like, but I think that I know like as a caricature artist, there's a lot of things that I do in the face just because like it gives it more form, even if it's not what I see. I even do that with photo reference too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
also
I,
the
I mean, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Also, the area like on the collar and the neck where that meets, like that seems really flat right there as well. Like
Mm,
maybe the lighting or the tone isn't right on that. I don't know.
mm,
Like I said,
mm,
I feel like I'm kind of nitpicking really.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So you were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I mean, I was to say, even from if I'm looking at a photo and even in the photo, if it doesn't look right, I try to translate it a little differently, adding a little more shadow or something like that, because it might not translate great in the composition. Um, but like I said, I can't really tell because there's no other photo. So, um, but I can see some of those things that you're saying too, for sure.
There's this thing that happens. Also, the wrinkles on the side of the face with the glare. The
Hmm.
wrinkles somehow seem like um, just like lines. They don't like feel like they're actually wrinkles. They just look like lines drawn on the face. But
Hmm.
there's something that happens when you try to copy. I mean, this has been my experience when you try to copy a photo. Like I get into this place in my mind where it's like I have to copy it exactly the way the photo looks, and that's actually not true because most people aren't going to look that closely at the reference anyway. And I don't know. I guess this is just an opinion, but I don't think most people like care as much about how well copied it is as much as the emotion that they feel when they look at it.
Mm.
Um, so I don't know. I think that's probably my best advice, which is just maybe think about like the emotional impact that the image has as opposed to copying it exactly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure.
So let's go to the other one. I think you're probably more organized than I am. I imagine your life's super organized because of your.
You know, it's funny. I am different. My wife is also an artist, and we are almost bipolar. So I'm very neat, and like I have to make even when I'm creating things, everything's neat, clean. All my pencils are lined up. There's no trash. But she is the opposite. She's all over the place. She doesn't care. She'll throw things. So yeah, I am a little bit of a neat freak.
Does that drive you crazy? Have you guys come to terms with that yet?
It's almost like I don't know. It's we learn to live with one another, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just how it works like that, I guess.
Yeah, I think my wife and I have the same thing, except, yeah, that's definitely true. Um, all right. Except for me, I think I'm more obsessive about stuff, and she just doesn't care.
Yeah.
She's just having fun and laughing, and I'm like
Yeah.
obsessing about this thing that needs to get done. Okay.
Right.
So, the one of Kano, the judo, uh, father of judo, modern judo.
Ah, all right. So we have two here. I see two caricatures.
Hmm.
All right. So the one with the red background for sure, I can tell is him. I
Hmm.
love that lazy that eye
Yeah.
that eye. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, the
Uh,
lazy eye is my favorite part too.
yeah. I think that's really what gives the likeness as well. So going back here. The second one, I don't that's him as well too, right? Or
It's
is that
Al
someone?
Hirschfeld.
Oh, Al Hirsch. Okay. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, it doesn't look like the other guy. Okay. I didn't see another reference photo with it, so that's why I was having that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he didn't send a reference with that one.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. Right on. Yeah, I mean, it's the simplicity of it, the lines and everything. Interesting. It got some interesting lines going on too, just so shapes.
I see his posts coming up quite often. Dominic Zeilinger. I don't know if
Okay.
you recognize that name, but he participates in a lot of the contests.
Yeah, yeah. Is that the same guy that I did the commission for? I know several Dominics, so I'm trying to remember which Dominic. Um, yeah, I actually did. He actually commissioned me for some pieces. So
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
right on.
So let's talk about the one with the red background. Do you have any pointers on that, or?
Yeah, let's see here. And let me pull up the reference next to the actual caricature. There we go. Cool. So yeah, like I mentioned before, I think just his lazy eye definitely is that feature that gets the likeness. I think the head shape, everything is spot on to his. Oh, um, I know for me, since I'm nitpicky in the sense of textures. One thing I always see with the artists when they use textures or something like that, I see some in the mustache and then in the hair.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it almost looks too flat when we use textures. So and it helps to like lower the opacity or maybe use a gradient inside the texture to make it not as flat.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it a little more interesting because other than that, otherwise it just looks like you just threw in a texture. It's almost like a second thought. It does not too much thought to it.
Hmm.
So other than that, I mean, it's a funny caricature for sure. Great likeness, but yeah,
But
yeah.
I wanted to say something about this work. The first thing, like the first critique I had, I guess I should always start with something that I like, huh? I think that I like the expression is just really good. I think like the with the eye and with the way the lower lip is drawn and kind of like that droopy face, like it really definitely captures the personality. So any critique that I have is really just like a style preference or like maybe a technical thing that I noticed. But the first thing that I noticed is the hair. Um, for me, it's not so much flat, it's actually atmospheric, which it looks like the texture is like clouds or something. But that doesn't really work for my eye when I look at it because for me, it looks like it's cut out and then I'm looking at something through a window.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see what you're saying for sure. Um, yeah, I think just a few nitpicks here is just like the sideburns. The lines almost don't look like they're lining up with the face and things like that. Uh, Maybe the shadows, um, like some on the cheekbones, kind of. I don't know. It's something about that is a little weird for me. I'm not
He's
sure
also
exactly.
he's also I'm just noticing it. It's like right below the level of consciousness almost, but my eye is now picking up on like little splotches of red on the face. Do you see that?
Let's see. I don't know if I see that on my screen. Oh, you know what? I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so if
Huh.
that is there and my eye is just not playing tricks on me, I think that can be actually utilized to make more form. Like it's almost like he shaded it as a 2D form, and maybe I mean, judging by his work, that's kind of what he's going for. But um, yeah, there's like no real structure. It looks like a paper cutout or something, you know. Because if it was an actual, if the nose was actually meant to be like a nose that's coming off, he would have shaded it above the nostril and below the that bottom plane of the nose.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. And I mean, this might just be not be my taste. I'm not like a big fan of floating heads.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. Other than that, I mean, it's a spot on likeness. It's great in that sense. Of a caricature for sure. Um, but yeah.
I think it's
Pretty
hard to
cool.
critique unless someone has like a specific question with what they want to do or what direction they kind of want to go with it, you know.
Right,
I
right.
think I feel like with this kind of work, it really needs to be perfect. Like the line work has to be perfect, and like you mentioned, the sideburns, like there's that tiny little couple pixels there between the sideburns and the face, and then there was another part. Yeah, there's like another couple of parts that I noticed at first, but yeah, I don't know. I guess that's probably the biggest one. But yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, there we go. Right on the side of the nose, like on his left side of the nose,
Yeah.
that like
Yeah. Yeah.
couple of pixels right there. And like when you're drawn like that, you just, you know, if it's not lined up perfectly, you just notice that. Your mind just notices that, you know.
Yeah. Hmm. For sure.
The Al
Yeah.
Hirschfeld almost looks like Sigmund Freud.
Uh, right. Overall, I mean, still great. Great caricature for sure.
Cool. Well, let's plug what you got going on. Colorboxentertainment.com. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Colorboxentertainment.com. And then there you can also go to the Facebook and Instagram Colorbox Entertainment. So yeah, that's where you'll see like the live work, some of the more, the things I do for businesses. So a little bit of a different style, but still caricatures.
And can people find the products that you sell on your website, or do they have to contact you directly to order like cell phone cases and stuff?
Yeah, that's just directly to me. So I don't have that marketed on the website. Sometimes I have other things like pages, but I just take those down when I'm not selling them at the moment. So yeah, if you have something like that, definitely contact me. So
So if someone sees your images on your website, like some of the ones that you sent me, can they contact you and have that put on a cell phone case or?
yeah, so I just go through a third party. Like I don't do actual printing myself, so I
Mhm.
can do the work. but I'll just, we'll get it printed onto something else, and I'll work with the dimensions, things like that. But yeah, for sure. So I work more with like t-shirts, you know, more of that case. The phone case was just like an example of what I was using earlier, um, of, just product wise.
Okay. So we're not going to have an Isca this year. It'll be all online, right? But assuming that
Yeah,
yeah, that's a bummer.
yeah,
Assuming that COVID doesn't come back, I guess I'll see you at the one after.
yeah. Hopefully, hopefully they'll still have it in Las Vegas. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
And if you
that's just.
come to Europe, you should come to Eurocature.
Oh man, I want to. I definitely want to. I have to save up for that for sure.
Yeah.
But my wife and I and our kid would definitely want to come up there. I've never been, and it'd
Really?
be
You've
great
never
to
been to
see everything
Europe?
there.
Okay.
No. So it'd be awesome to be there. Definitely.
Yeah, Vienna is an amazing city, and the Eurocature conference is really more like a family, like because there's only 50 people allowed, I think. So we only have room for 50. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Wow. Crazy.
Cool. Well, thanks for your time, man. It's great getting to know you a little bit better, and yeah, cool
Thanks for
story.
having me, for sure. Yeah. Love what you're
Yeah.
doing here too. So it's been awesome.
Thanks, man. Okay, so Sebastian Martin, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, have a good one.
All right. All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye.